Welcome to the Prospector Digest. I'm your host, Adam Regalado. Here on the Prospector Digest, we talk about news, arts and culture, and sports. All stories that we cover on the prospectordaily.com, or stories you can find on our print issue of the newspaper. Welcome. I hope everybody's having a great week. Yesterday was Halloween. I only worked at my retail job, but I hope everybody had a great Halloween and stayed safe. Alrighty, well, let's get into it. Alrighty, everybody. You're listening to the Prospector Digest. Let's go ahead and move into our news segment. I have Jimena Cordero here, reporter of the Prospector. As many of you may know, Halloween is a really, really important month. Yes, of course, we celebrate Halloween, but it is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And Jimena Cordero here wrote a story entitled Risk Factors and Early Detection Can Help in the Fight Against Breast Cancer. Thank you for joining me, Jimena.
Of course.
So can you tell me about a little bit about who you talked to and what you... So can you talk to me a little bit about what you learned, who you talked to?
Yeah. So I talked to Dr. Jennifer Molokwu, who's a professor of family and community medicine and a director of the Cancer Prevention and Control Program at Texas Tech University here in El Paso. And she kind of explained a lot of the misconceptions of breast cancer. A lot of the very big one is that it's just family genetics, that it just stems from that because there's a certain genetic mutation that's called BRCA1 and BRCA2, which are technically supposed to be combating against breast cancer, but if they mutate is when you have a high risk of getting breast cancer. And of course that is through your parents, mostly your mother, who passes it down to either male or female offspring. So that's a really big misconception, that it can only be through that. Of course it hidens it, but it can be just, you can be a regular person without the mutation, that you could just develop it.
Yeah.
And also another thing that she really emphasized was it can be young people. I think a lot of college students think, there can be nothing wrong in terms of breast cancer because we are so young and we,
assume we're healthy.
Yeah, we assume we're healthy. And, a lot of the cases that we do see are once you're getting to middle age, a little bit older.
Yeah.
But it's important to always, check, make self-inspect, make sure that you're okay. If you feel that there's something wrong, it never hurts to go and check.
Yeah. Can I ask if you learned about maybe how somebody can inspect or check themselves?
Yeah. Of course, just looking, but
yeah.
She talks about looking specifically for bumps. Of course, breasts have bumps naturally, but if there's anything out of the ordinary or anything that you wasn't there before, definitely it's a sign. And it's a sign that you should go and get checked out. Not a sign to panic, but it can, it's better to catch it early than...
Yeah, better to be safe in its entirety. And nothing out of the ordinary, but that means knowing your body already before, so you can definitely notice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did they say anything maybe about how often to check or anything like that?
Just, whenever you can. Whenever you remember is very just as, I guess, as often as you can, whenever you remember, it's a good chance. And then another thing is also, of course, the bumps can be a little tricky because you're okay, it could be a sign. It could also just be, a bump that is going to show up for a day or two and disappear. But blood in that area, or another one that is a little more unusual is the thick skin. She described it as the orange peel. So if you feel or if you see that your skin is like that, that is a very big sign, and you should get it checked out. Just to make sure that everything's okay, that it's not breast cancer. And of course, through mammograms are a really, really big one. And Texas Tech has free mammograms for people who are insured and uninsured. So you can show up, and if you want to be safe at any age, for any reason, you can go and get a mammogram.
Oh, nice. I did not know that. That's a really, really cool thing that they do, actually. I did not know that. What else did she talk to you about? Did she talk about maybe how to deal with the news if somebody is told that they have breast cancer, where they can go, or support systems or something like that?
She did talk a lot about how it's not just physical. Of course, you're going to go through chemo and You're gonna experience like that tiredness and that weakness.
Yeah.
But people, of course, when you hear like the C word, cancer, especially breast cancer for women, you panic. You think it's the end. You think it's death. But with early detection, it doesn't mean that. It means that you really do have a really good chance of combating it, especially if you go to the right people. And she talks a lot about how it does affect identity and mental health, because of course you're going through all these treatments, which might make you lose your hair, lose your eyebrows. In certain cases, they do have to operate and get rid of the breasts, which of course for a lot of women, the hair and the breasts are a very big part of female identity.
Yeah.
So once they get rid of that, it's kind of like they panic, and they don't feel as much of a woman as they used to, which is, I think, like one of the saddest parts, that was kind of taken away from them, from something they couldn't necessarily prevent. And of course, she also talks about how for a lot of women, family is like a really big aspect, and especially in Hispanic communities and Hispanic families, women do end up being like the caretakers of their whole families, both, you know, their parents and like their children. So when they do get diagnosed with breast cancer, they're of course thinking about their families and what's going to happen if they are gone, because they are the ones that are taking care of them. So yeah,
it's a really, really hard thing to process, I'm sure, and I just hope that everybody who is ever told that devastating news has a support system around them, or can find one. I feel like that's definitely the most important thing.
Yeah.
What would you say was your biggest takeaway, or something that listeners should take into consideration, or like what should be the thing they should pay attention to when reading your article?
I think for sure the free mammogram scans.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, if you just want to sit down, I'll just cut this part out. Don't worry about it.
For sure, the free mammograms, that's something to really, really take advantage of. Texas Tech has fundraised throughout the years to be able to provide this to the community, and it never hurts to check. And of course, just genetic testing isn't like a need.
Yeah.
But if you know your mother, your grandmother, your great grandmother has had breast cancer, finding out if you do have those genes and if you do have a genetic mutation could help you in, making, like, when you're self-examining, if you do see a lump or something like that, it could help you get the push to go and get it checked out, get a mammogram, and make sure that you're okay.
Take all the precautions you need.
So you catch it earlier is your best chance, and like the best possible outcome is going to come out of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today on the Prospector Digest, Jimena.
Thank you.
Alrighty, now let's get into our next segment. Our sex column that's up on the prospectordaily.com. This is a sex column that I personally write, and this is the second installment. Intimate Insights with the Prospector, Embracing Sexuality and Pleasure. I have photographer of the Prospector here, Dominic Macias, to have this conversation with me. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
So I wrote this one. I thought it was really, really important to talk about, especially after the first one about navigating consent. This one kind of hits home to me. This, of course, as you might know, this segment is pretty personal. So, of course, trigger warnings if you're not comfortable with these kinds of conversations and such. But yes, let's get into it. So, like I was saying, this one is pretty near and dear to my heart, only because personally, when I started having sex, I wasn't thinking about pleasure whatsoever. I think I was just thinking about having sex to do it or to please somebody else, and never really, the thought never came across my mind that I should also be experiencing that pleasure just as well as them. So I just thought it was super important. So the first thing that I really talk about is that sexuality, and not in terms of orientation, but our desires and fantasies and the way we express intimacy and connection with others. I think that was just a super good way to start it, that like it's embracing a broader view of sexuality, like a deeper self-awareness that can lead to stronger relationships and a more fulfilling life. What do you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think we're so caught up in the I guess, the romanticizing of the act of itself.
For sure.
Just to do it, like what you were saying. And we've seen all the movies, of like the teen movies, like early 2000s, of like just doing it, losing your virginity, and like doing it at a I don't know, a high school party or something like that, right? Like, but I guess when we get older, the maturity of it all kind of seeps through the concept, and we kind of want to explore those different avenues and different realms of what this can actually bring us. And I know in your story you talk about like a lot of self-awareness, knowing what you do and what you don't want, and how to be truly fulfilled in that. And I think as we get older, we find more layers to that, and I think there's beauty in it as well.
There is beauty in it, and I think before we get into like a more deeper conversation about like ways to find your own pleasure, I think that I had to just acknowledge that some people don't feel like they're allowed to do that, especially like in a border city, you know, in a Hispanic household or a very religious household. You know, those kinds of conversations are frowned upon, and the thought of pleasure or you having sex to feel pleasure is such like a shameful thing to some people.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I know that some, especially in El Paso, like some households, some Hispanic households, you know, you rarely see the affection.
Yeah. You
rarely see like the physical touch of, you know, either your parents or your grandparents, or you see your aunts and uncles not touching, and like, you know, like, but what was so surprising to me, especially as I was growing up, was my mom taught me to hug everybody as soon as we entered somebody's house.
Yeah, same.
And I was like, but why? Like, it goes back to your consent, right? Like, and kind of just at a young age realizing, I really don't want to touch my tío, right? Like, I don't want to hug my tío, like, and for whatever reason. But I think I was going off of something. Hold on.
No worries.
What was I saying? Oh my
God.
Like,
maybe that like because that connection is so much more important than you realize.
Yeah.
That physical touch is so much more important than you realize.
And I think that's what I was going with, was that the physical touch, it's so important, especially for the younger generation, seeing your grandpa and grandma hugging and kissing. Like, I think of my nieces and nephews, and I want to know, like, how do they view love?
Yeah.
Like, are they getting the I guess the physical affection of like a family member? Like, do we actually hug our nieces and nephews? Do we actually hug our loved ones? Like, do we, right? And so yeah, I just think about like the
I think this conversation can be really, really hard to have, solely because like, yes, it does come to like the consent aspect of it. It was just like, if you don't want to have that like physical touch with somebody that's in your family, you don't need to, because you acknowledge how important that is and how important your body is, you know. And so I think that's why I talked about it before I went into everything else, because it's all about how you grow up and how you think about physical touch and like the emotions that you associate it with.
Oh yeah.
You know? And so after this, I go into a little bit more about like, we need to have those open conversations, like how we're having right now. Like, I think they're especially important, especially with this new generation and people making fun of other people on the internet for like asking people for consent, you know? Like, I don't for those skits that you see where it's just like, my son does not have to touch you if they don't want to touch you. Literally. My daughter does not have to do that if they don't want to, you know? And people are making fun of that for some reason, which I find really, really weird.
Maybe because they have some underlying baggage that they didn't want to deal with themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The next thing I want to go into is the process of self-exploration and education, you know, like understanding your own body, your desires, and your boundaries. You know, like everything, of course, goes back to like the first article, which is consent, you know. I think we understand that now. And so it's just like, when you're in a relationship now, you need to establish trust. Personally, this is what I believe. And then you can go into those conversations which I think are really, really important if you're having sex. Of like, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. This is what I want to do. Are you open to doing that as well? You know, because look, let's be honest. People have desires. People have fantasies. People have kinks. People have fetishes, you know? And as long as they're not harming yourself or others, like, you should, of course, be able to explore those, you know.
Feel okay with it.
If you're, yeah, exactly. And so, like, if your partner's okay with it, then that's awesome, but you'll never know if you don't have that discussion. And if you're not comfortable with something that your partner is saying that they might be into, it's okay to shut that down because you have your own boundaries.
Exactly. Oh, for sure.
It looks like we're running out of a little bit of time, but I think the final thing I just want to kind of talk about is embracing pleasure, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like breaking down that stigma. I don't think I wrote it myself in this, you know, but like, because it's a very controversial topic as well. You know, like masturbation, yeah, you know, like just self pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
But I do personally believe that sometimes if you don't know what does feel good, you can find out for yourself and report back to your partner, which is like a funny way to like say it.
No, I love that.
But yeah,
it's open communication, not only with your partner but with yourself too.
Exactly.
Like, you got to be honest with yourself. like honestly,
you don't know what makes you feel good until you find out yourself sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
And it goes for the same as this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Don't assume, because you only make a well, I can't say that, but like, you know, don't assume. Like, just you gotta really be direct with it.
Yeah.
And you can't beat around the bush. You know what I mean?
Or maybe you should.
Oh. I see what you did there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's all for today on Intimate Insights with the Prospector. You'll be able to read this and learn a little bit more about what I have to say on our next issue, which comes out Tuesday.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining me, Dawn.
Thank you, Adam.
Alrighty, welcome back. You're listening to the Prospector Digest. Let's go ahead and move into our arts and culture segment. I have Isaiah Moreno here, photographer here at the Prospector. He was able to attend a fashion experience called Death by Denim. This event was hosted by Junk Approve's Janae Walker. So could you tell me a little bit about the event? How was it?
Yeah, so the event, it was a fashion show hosted in a funeral home.
Oh, that's awesome.
And this fashion show, it was completely denim looks. I remember they were saying throughout the show that they received 400 pounds of like jeans, like actual, not just fabric, like jean clothing. And they were able to turn it into a bunch of looks over the past couple of, I think they said 2 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they had a bunch of different designers showcased. They had the show split up into different, I guess, parts for the designers. And yeah, overall it was a pretty nice experience. You know, I've attended a couple of fashion shows, but I've personally never seen one like this, one in a funeral home, one with a message about rebirth and rebuilding yourself. That's kind of what Death by Denim revolved, is reinventing, hence the whole jean theme and like reconstructing.
So Janae Walker of Junk Approved, she uses like old fabric or old materials to make new stuff, right? That's kind of like her whole premise.
Yeah, for this fashion show, it was just a bunch of, like I had said right now, old used denim that they were donated, and they turned it into these awesome looks for the runway. Awesome.
That's a really, really cool message, I think. It's just all those jeans that, you know, like I'm sure all of us, all of the listeners and myself even have like had a pair of jeans and there was a hole and we just didn't use them anymore, and to like know that they're able to still turn into something beautiful is pretty cool. So she did, Janice Walker did host the event, but who else was able to attend? I heard there was other designers, brands.
Well, a couple of designers that were present was EPCC's fashion instructor Vanessa Montez, Ron Durant's, Ray by Jay, Blessed Ones, and that's just a couple I can name off the top of my head.
Okay.
And there was also they had other designers featured, like one of another designer, his name is Caesar. He had
It's okay.
Another designer that was featured, his name is Cesar Sotelo. He makes custom bags, and the models were able to hold the bags during the runway, and it was like a little coffin bag, so it fit the whole aesthetic too.
That's really, really cool. How was the vibe there? Like, you said it was in a funeral home. Like, how was that?
It was pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. The very first opening walk, it was some girl coming out of the side, or no, it was pretty cool, not gonna lie. Like, the opening of it, Janae had gave like a stereotypical funeral speech and like a remembrance, and she attributed it to Denim. It was like Denim's
like
funeral.
A eulogy.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And the opening act of the fashion show, it was a model who came out through the side, and she was like crying to the casket, and it turned into like this dance number to like a sort of classical music, and then the fashion show kicked off after that. So it was a really nice experience.
Wow, that's really cool. I just want to ask one more question about what was everybody's like reaction to that, like after the show had ended?
After the show had ended, I had talked to a couple people to just get like their overall thoughts and opinions, and they were all pretty. They all thought it was a pretty good fashion show, and a common theme that I had heard talking to people is that this is something that they've never seen before, and it was a really, I guess, just sort of cool message about reinventing and rebirth, and it was like deeper than just upcycling denim.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me. That sounds like an amazing fashion show. This story will be on our next print issue, which comes out this Tuesday. So hope everybody can read it and look at those really, really cool photos by Isaiah here. Thank you for joining me on the Digest, Isaiah.
Of course.
You're listening to the Prospector Digest. Let's get into our sports segment, or should I say my continuance in trying to learn about the sports world. I have staff reporter here, Sebastian Perez Navarro, here to talk to me about a bit more about UTEP football. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I think last time we talked, or on last episode, we said we needed them to win the rest of the games to be Sun Bowl eligible. Can you talk to me a little bit about everything?
Well, yeah, we were 1-6. We needed UTEP to win out and have 6 wins in order for them to be bowl eligible. So that extends far beyond all the bowl games in general. They lost, so we are no longer bowl eligible, but we still got hopes to finish the season off strong. There are certainly some games in which can be winnable and can give some sort of hope going into year 2 of the Walden era. But no, we disappointingly are no longer bowl eligible.
That's unfortunate, but that's okay. I know that our first episode, you said we need to give Coach Walden and this new team a grace, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to be very, very patient with them. Can you talk to me about their last game and what went on?
Well, their last game was heavily contested. It was a tight game in which the Miners led for a majority of it. But then Skylar Locklear goes out, their starting quarterback. They have to put in true freshman J.P. Pickles. And it was one of the situations where the offense really stalls and the defense just gave out. La Tech went and scored a last-minute touchdown. UTEP couldn't respond. And you can't really attest it to the team not being good because this team is young. Yeah. This team is on their 3rd quarterback of the year. Reminder, Cade McConnell is out with a season-ending wrist injury. Yeah. Skylar Locklear's status is still unknown after taking the harsh hit from La Tech.
I was going to ask about that. I saw that online, and that's crazy. I think you had mentioned before, I don't know if it was on the podcast, that we had a scuffle with La Tech last time we saw them.
We did. It's the 2nd year in a row. Last year was an offensive lineman who was on the ground. A La Tech defender came and stepped near his head.
Wow.
It's messed up.
That's crazy messed up. Was that player kicked out of the game?
He was not penalized during the game. So this year, what they changed is that they did eject the player. In college football, there's a rule called targeting. Basically, what that means is if any way you use your head as a weapon towards another player's head, and it's labeled as targeting, then you're ejected from the game. No ifs or buts about it. That's how the rule went. So when the play happened, La Tech's player was ejected out of the game. rightfully slow. It was a pretty obvious penalty.
Yeah. Well, sorry to get you off track. I know you're talking about our game against Middle Tennessee and how that went.
Oh, yeah. Surprisingly enough, I think for the first time since the Southern Utah game, UTEP's favored to win. Fox Sports has it a 60% chance over Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee has one more win than us. They're 2-6 overall in the season. They're still bowl eligible, but the year in which they've had has been really bad. So it's a battle of CUSA's bottom dwellers, you can say.
Yeah.
But Middle Tennessee comes into the Sun Bowl. UTEP still has wanting to keep some sort of energy alive at the Sun Bowl to prove that Walden has a team that is going to go out there and win every single game, even if there's nothing to play for.
Yeah.
Because all UTEP has to play for right now is pride. But they also have to send a message out to those in CUSA for next year, to those in the Mountain West who are waiting for us 2 years into the future. UTEP can't afford to be weak right now. They can't afford to drop easy games. Now, one of the main stipulations in which it's going to be very interesting to see from the Miners is their quarterback play. True freshman JP Pickles is going to be starting. It's his first career start. Again, Cade's out, Skylar's out. They have to turn to the freshman. And the peculiar situation that Scotty Walden finds himself in again is his second quarterback controversy of the year, because he picked JP Pickles to start over local quarterback Shea Smith. So it's been swirling up some media speculation over what's happening behind closed doors, whether it's the local kid who should start or whether it's Pickles who came out of town. Both of these quarterbacks have been going back and forth. With Pickles, you didn't really get to see him throw the ball very much against La Tech. Shea Smith has entered games here and there, but it's been too little of a showing to truly tell the UTEP Miner faithful what Shea Smith can do. I got to cover one of his games in high school when he played against the Eastwood Troopers. I was there on the call, mobile quarterback. He led his team in rushing, and he's going to get the ball through the ground. So whether or not UTEP goes with a heavy passing game with Pickles, we'll see, because Pickles, the majority of El Paso hasn't seen him, and he really didn't get the chance to throw against La Tech.
Yeah.
But if Coach Walden believes in Pickles, then there's got to be something there.
Yeah, for sure. Do you think the only reason that people are hesitant about it is solely because it's a local person? It's a local kid?
Shea Smith is the local kid. His dad came to UTEP, and not the controversy, but definitely the discussion around Shea Smith is that he had multiple opportunities to go to schools in which you can argue in the football spectrum are better than UTEP. He had offers to go to the University of Houston. He had offers to go to multiple schools in Power 4 conference play, but he chose UTEP. A team who's in CUSA, a team who doesn't have the football accolades that other programs do.
Yeah.
And with the transfer portal and with the frustration that his dad has been hinting towards over the environment in the Sun Bowl, etc., then you're wondering whether or not the Smith family and Shea Smith himself is going to say, enough is enough. If you don't play me, then I'm going to hop in the transfer portal and go somewhere where they're actually going to use me. So that's the biggest controversy. The kid had a ton of opportunities to go outside. He stayed here. And whether or not that's going to be rewarded, well, we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. So what team are we going up against next?
Middle Tennessee.
Middle Tennessee. And I just heard that they're the same as us, right? They're like 1-6.
They're 2-6. They've had a bad season. No one's been talking about them in CUSA, and the biggest thing that could speak for them is being the underdogs entering a Sun Bowl, and a Miners team who's only won one game so far this season.
Do we have a chance?
We do. I expect us to win this game.
Really?
Awesome. We have some momentum. La Tech isn't the best team, but at the end of the day, UTEP kept the game close, and if it weren't for Locklear going out, the Miner offense possibly holds on. They were able to hold on against FIU, and I'll reiterate it. Scotty Walden needs to drain the clock. I get that there's a want to go fast, blue blaze offense as they call it, but that style of game isn't going to win you the affair. You need to drain clock, and you need to make sure that your offense can go on long, sustained drives. If not, when the other team is holding the ball for a majority of the time, and you have constant 3-and-outs or simply can't score and are giving the ball right back, then the opposing team is going to run up the score on you. So if I'm UTEP, slow down a little bit. And if they slow down, especially with their true freshmen, I think they could easily take it from a Middle Tennessee team right now who's down in the dumps.
Yeah. Well, so that's on November 9th at 6 p.m., and that's also our homecoming game.
Our homecoming game is next week, so it's
Next
against
week.
Kennesaw State.
Kennesaw State. Got it. Alrighty, well, thank you. I'll probably cut that.
No worries, you're good.
It's just like, okay, so when is that game happening?
The Kennesaw State one?
No, Middle Tennessee.
Oh, it's happening this Saturday.
This Saturday?
So
Awesome.
tomorrow. It's happening tomorrow at Sumble, 1:30 p.m. Whether or not people are going to show up is completely up in the air.
Mhm.
I think that they should. I mean, yeah, it's early afternoon, but the biggest games in college football happen in the morning, so there's no excuse for us not to show up.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a Saturday.
Exactly.
It's the weekend.
It's
Come
not
on.
a Wednesday, it's not a Thursday, it's not a Tuesday.
Yeah.
You know, no excuse. Go to the Sumble. Go to the Sumble. Go, if you don't go this week, go next week. Go watch the Miners.
Awesome. And then after that, we have our homecoming game against Kennesaw State on November 9th.
Exactly.
Our last and final home game before the season's over. So all I can say, with all my knowledge, is good luck. We got this next game, and let's try to keep going.
We gotta support UTEP. We gotta make sure that Coach Walden knows that he's our guy, and if so, then that just leads to more comfort, which can lead to more success.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me on the Prospector Digest, Sebastian. Alrighty, now let's get into some UTEP volleyball. I have writer contributor here, Christian Garza, here at the Prospector. He attended UTEP volleyball's game against WKU. Thank you for joining me, Christian.
Yep, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So I understand that there was 2 games, one on Friday and one on Saturday. Can you talk to me a little bit about how the games went?
Right, so it was 2 games, Friday and Saturday versus Western Kentucky. And going into this game, they were both undefeated. Mm-hmm. So whoever would have won this would have put themselves in the number 1 position in the conference. So they both had a lot to lose in a way, because they both had that O on their record still, which whoever wins takes that O, pretty much. So the first game, it went to 4 sets, and Western Kentucky pulled it out here at UTEP. Mm-hmm. And the second game, it was back and forth. UTEP climbed their way back into the 5th set, like forced the 5th set. They almost had it. They were close. But Western Kentucky again took the second game. So unfortunately, they got the better of UTEP, but UTEP showed a lot of potential against a really great team in Western Kentucky. So
Awesome. Can you talk to me maybe a little bit some of the specifics about the game? What do you think went wrong that made UTEP fall?
I think maybe just the ability to weather those storms that Western Kentucky brought. Their offense they had a good offense, and they were really good when UTEP was trying to score. They were really good at keeping the ball alive. Mm-hmm. So I think Western Kentucky, that kept them in the game. So I think UTEP struggled to match their offense in a way. So I think that is kind of what led to UTEP coming up short in some of the plays. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe that was probably a flaw in the game.
Okay. No worries. Thank you. And so now that you said they're second, right? Or yes, it looks like they're second. I'm here looking at the stats. What does that mean for UTEP volleyball in Conference USA?
So it means that, well, now that they're right below Western Kentucky now, mm-hmm. so they kind of have to climb their way back up in Conference USA play. They have to try to win more conference games and try to just bridge that gap that's there now. Because going into this game, like I said, they were both at that spot where they're undefeated. So mm-hmm. now we're going to get to see kind of how they could claw their way back to the top, and it might just be a uphill battle.
Okay, awesome. How do you think they're going to do on their next game tomorrow against Middle Tennessee?
Against Middle Tennessee, I think it'll be a good test, but I think coming off that loss, mm-hmm. when you're undefeated and you lose that O, I think it drives you to want to get that game back, get a game back in general. So I really think they're going to come out strong and just want to really make a statement after dropping those 2 games.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've been doing amazing so far throughout the season, so I'm really, really excited to see what they're going to do next game and their next couple of games. I'm sure that they're going to pull through. I've been looking at them a lot through you and Sophia, our sports editor here at The Prospector, learning more and more about them. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know I'm just learning a lot more about sports. Well, as much as I can, right?
Right.
And so I'm excited. But that's all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today on the Prospector Digest. You can find all of these stories and learn a little bit more about them on the prospectordaily.com or on the next print issue of the Prospector. Thank you for joining me and have a great day. Thank you for listening. I'll catch you next time. I'm your host, Adam Regalado.